Okay, so we've roughed everything in. We've identified some of the things that we still have to do, some of the things that we don't like. Background is a little too white in comparison to what we're doing. Our steel is not showing up very nicely. We're missing some graphics. We did apply and get the color a little bit better here for the overall housing as we look at that. It still might not be as shiny as we want, but it is better. So let's go with and toss on our numbers, because I want to show you something that happens here. So we took a material, and that material is the housing, and it's kind of applied to everything, a whole lot of things. Now, the advantage and the reason we did this is because they are all the same parts. Let me just check here quick. Elizabeth and Deshard, did you have questions, or is your hands just still raised? Okay, just still raised. Okay. Now, in order to apply a texture or a label, graphic, whatever we want to call it, we apply it to that material. Now, what happens is we're going to come in and we're going to go labels, and we're going to add a label as a texture. We're going to go to that location that we had it. I'm going to do a quick test because I want to try. We're going to do the PNG. Now, you can see what happens is it is applied to everything. So I can move it all over the place because it's applied not just to this part. It's applied to the material. So if for some reason you want to have that applied to just this part, you would make a separate material, call it whatever you want for the dial or for the front housing, but then what's going to happen is it's not going to associate. So if you change the colors, it'll stay the same, and you got to do all these color matching. So what I'm going to do here is to get this positioned properly, because by dragging it in here, we see it highlighted here. We've got a variety of things we can do. If we roll this down, mapping type is what is it going on, and there's a bunch of options, because what it'll do is it will distort it, and we'll go into more of these later. But right now, planar is what we want because we're going to map it onto a flat surface. We can adjust by DPI, or we can adjust by scene units. I usually do scene units because if I know it's a 2-inch wide graphic, then I'm going to key that in. I don't have to worry about scaling it up and down. I can rotate it, I can flip it. I have it set for two-sided. What that means, if I come back here quickly, oh, it's not going to show it because it's here. Let me do this. Two-sided means that it will cast through everything, and you can see that what it's basically doing is it's projecting it onto the surface. So it's projecting it all the way through. Even here, you can see it's projecting it along the top. So we'll turn off two-sided. I'm just going to do that. You can see how it just kind of projects it and sends it across. We're going to get rid of two-sided. We're going to get rid of two-sided. There we go. Now, it doesn't get rid of that because it still thinks that you're trying to project it onto the top. That's because it's a planar object. So it's projecting in that way. If I wanted it up on here, see how it rotates that plane? and now it's flat on there. So I'm moving it to the location that I want it. What I'm going to do is simply go standard views, and I'm going to go front. Now, I'm standard views front, but I'm still in perspective. So I'm trying to apply this a little bit nicer, so I want to go camera, orthographic. So now I'm getting a true straight on view, which will allow me to center it properly. I don't know, I'm going to leave it at the 0, 0, and you can use your centers. But if you want to be able to dial it in a little bit better, we can also come in and we can change the brightness. So we can do some Photoshop editing and adjust things. We can rotate it. Just want to get it, let me just see one thing. That's my width. So, okay, there we go. So now, if you're doing something different, you could also do a repeat. So you know, if you wanted, if it was a pattern or something. Sorry, when would what be used, Deshar? So, okay, so here's where I've used it, or here's how you would. I don't know. I haven't had a need for it, because even if it's on plastic, you don't want it pushing through. So I'm not quite sure. I've never needed two-sided before. I've always turned it off. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I've just never actually, I don't know when or why. Now, as you've seen here, we could have multiple graphics. So let's say I wanted you to come up with 5 variations on what these graphics are going to look like. We could do a rendering very easily, and just by turning them on and turning the other one off. Or if we're going to do colors. So that gives us that option. Now, let me go back, and we're going to go into our camera, and we'll go back to perspective. And you can see something in there, a graphic in there, really starts to make it look or feel a little bit more realistic. Now, something else. So we've got this object here. And it appeared to be a braided item. If we look here. Oh no, I closed it. Oh no. There. If we look here, it almost, well, it's a braided item inside a clear tube. So how would we do that? Well, we're probably not going to achieve that with just this. We would need to make this a hollow tube and then put something else in it. But what we might be able to do is cheat something here, and I'll just show you how to do 2 different things. So we can come in and let's go oh no, stop. Why? No, that's not going to work. It's not the one I want. Not give me Alright, that's not going to do what I wanted. So what we can do though is, again, let's try and cheat. So we're going to kind of go back here. There we go. Red, white, blue, braided cable. So we could come in So we kind of wanted it to have a tube-like look. So we're going to cheat a little bit. Oh. And for this one, we want to make it a cylinder because we're basically applying it to a cylinder. It's not going to do what I want. Okay, let's try something different. We're going to come over here. We're going to take a different approach. And instead of doing a color, I'm going to grab the object. There we go. Now it's not quite going in the right direction that I want, but it's starting to kind of communicate a little bit of what I'm hoping to achieve. So I can come in and adjust it. And distort it a little bit. Now, you can always fudge things in and it gets you kind of what you're looking for or trying for, you know, but doing it the right way is what's going to give you that realism. So I'm just going to come back in. I'm going to turn down the reflective index a little. Because again, the proper way to do it would be to make one part a tube and then you could extrude a tube inside of it and apply that banding color. Or you could literally create the wire wrap that goes around. So I'm going to save this. And you can see that I haven't really done a rendering yet. I try to minimize how much time I hit the render button. And it's gotten software's gotten a lot better. Like in the past, you used to have to render it to see it how it truly is. But every time you hit that render button, you've got to wait. And depending on your computer, how fast your computer is, what else you have running. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to just do a quick render just to say, hey, how are things looking? So I'm going to come up, I'm going to go to render, scroll down to render, and I've got options here. A still image, which is exactly that. It's one still image like this. An animation, which we don't have any animation set up. Keyshot XR, which is kind of for web. We won't worry about configurator or CMF. We're going to have it, what we're going to name it. Always pay attention, where is this going to be rendered to? This is the default. I normally have this going to a project folder or to whatever, something simple I can do. For this one, I'm just going to make it real simple and send it to my desktop. Render format, pretty much just assume you're going to do everything as a PNG. And then resolution, basically your size. This goes up to 6K, all the way down lower. If you guys are just doing test renders in that, 1280 by 1024 is fine. There's no need for it to be much bigger because you're just doing quick test renders. And then also knowing how much do you guys know about resolution? You know, the 2560, 2048 and stuff like that, and what that all means. Not a lot. Okay, so we'll go into that later, and we'll dive into that. So there I've got my settings. Now I've got my options. Do I want to run it in the background? Just assume yes. Inherit from real view time, CPU mode or GPU mode. Now, this is what I was talking about. So GPU is graphics processor unit. Keyshot loves running off of a GPU. And it runs faster off of that. If you're running off your CPU, it will run slower. And I'll show you a quick demo on that too, and what I mean. We won't worry about this. Always just assume, leave it at maximum samples for now. So, but let me show you what I'm talking about. So if I come in and I say I'm going to render it on my CPU mode. Now, I've got a fast computer. I've got 24 cores, a crap load of terabyte space, 128 megs, 64 megs, 128 megs of RAM. It's a nice computer. And it's a newer Intel processor CPU. But if I go render in background, let's wait for it to, so I hit render and now it's going to pop up. We can see how long this is going to take, and I'm going to let it take however long it's going to take. Okay, so 17 seconds. Not bad. Now, I'm going to go GPU mode, and that's pulling it from my graphics card. We'll go render in the background. Cool. So I couldn't even get it from one screen to the next before it was done. It took 1.52 seconds versus 17 seconds. It doesn't sound like a lot, but you guys will get into more complicated renderings more reflections, things of that nature. And you'll want to make sure you are on the right setting. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if I do a 5-minute rendering and I times it by 17, then it gets higher. Now imagine if I'm doing a 4,000 framed animation. You know, so I also have I'm upset because I don't have the best video card anymore, but I've got a crazy video card. Now, when we're looking at things and we're planning things, this is a simple model. We have to think about our materials and what's going on. The more reflections that are involved, the longer it takes because there's more it has to calculate. The more things bounce back and forth or have to pass through. So if I come in and I go and say, you know what, we are going to change our environment. Let me just hit save here. Let's find one that's actually decent. Yeah, I'll go with my favorites. Okay, if I come in here and I do this, now I've got reflections. Ah, where'd my render window go? So now, oh, about the same. Okay, so but let's do this now. We're going to come in and we're going to go materials. And we'll make that glass. We'll make the whole thing glass. So now all of a sudden we've got a lot of reflections in that we're going to try to do. So now we just slowed it down because there's more that it has to think about. There's more, it's got to look at what this is going to have happen. Now, still went really quick, but let's take a look at 4.49 seconds. Let's go and do that. And the reason I'm wanting to show you guys this is these are kind of some of the things that you have to plan for. The number of times that I see students up till 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, because for their final thesis project, they can't render it out in time, or they're wanting to render these massive renderings. It's like, well, why are you rendering something at 7K? 7K is what I give to clients when they want to have a billboard that is 55 inches. Knowing why to render and when to render. It's kind of like doing a 3D print. You could do the 4-hour 3D print, or you can do the 48-hour 3D print. Like what is really needed. So you can see here, if this is what I'm doing, and I have to wait for this, I'm not going to apply a material re-render, I'm going to try to get as much done as I can before I do a test render. Because it's just going to calculate so much more. Let's just pause. And you also have a Control-Z feature. Sorry, I never mentioned that. But you only have so many. I don't remember the exact limit, and I can't remember if you can edit that. So where I went to was edit preferences, where you can edit, if I want, I can do a light theme. Oh no. Good thing I just saved because I'm not sure if that's going to kill it or not. There we go. You can do a light theme or whatever. So you can play with all your preferences, all your folders, plugins, color management, things of that nature. Scene units, inches, centimeters, millimeters. Always try to, if you're working in inches in SolidWorks and you're bringing your model in inches, set it in inches here. It'll just help, like, for example, if I'm going to put a texture on there, you know, if I'm working in inches and I know that this is 8 inches high, how big of a texture, how deep of a texture do I want? If I have to key it in millimeters versus, well, I want a 0.01 depth. Okay. That is kind of the overview that I wanted to cover. You know, so you can see, you know, we got it to the point where, hey, not bad. We would still want to go in and I'd want to tweak this and get the right material in there. But this is enough to put in front of somebody and to help them visualize. Because again, someone might not be able to visualize the marker rendering. Someone, you might want to get this just as for quick approval. You know, some clients can see a sketch. Some clients need this. How much time I'm going to spend on my rendering is going to determine how much or what I'm going to use it for. And you saw that one cheese sauce thing. Didn't spend much time on it because all I was using it for was to show internally. Now they want me to do one that their internal people can take to 7-Eleven and say, this is what it's going to look like. Well, there, I'm going to spend a significant amount more time. I'm going to dial in materials. This also could be, all I want to do is show a quick rendering that shows 5 different types of handles. You know, I want to show